June 6, 1944. 5:40 hours. The English Channel heaves under a low ceiling of grey and salt. 45 minutes before H hour, the assault waves of Operation Neptune ride the swells toward Normandy. Through spray and fog, dark shapes move where no tank should be. M4A1 Shermans, 33 tons of steel, riding canvas like rafts, engines sputtering wet exhaust into sea air. On LCT 610, Lieutenant Jimmy Green, 13th/18th Royal Hussars, Queen Mary's Own, hunches in the turret of his vehicle, call sign Courage. The tank's 75mm barrel points skyward at an absurd angle, quiet, sealed against the tide by a rubberized screen that wobbles and flexes with every wave. The Duplex Drive, DD tank they called it, has two screw propellers bolted to its rear, powered by the turning of its tracks through a clutch system invented by a Hungarian engineer named Nicholas Straussler. At 4 knots it swims, but only just. Around Green's tank, other Shermans rock and tilt on the open deck. The ship's skipper checks his watch and shouts into the salt wind, 10 minutes to launch. 10 minutes to. Green starts, then stops, feeling the pulse of the sea smack the screens, hearing the unsteady flutter of waterproofing canvas straining against steel hoops. You'd never think something this heavy should float, he tells himself, touching the canvas with an open hand. Feels alive, like skin holding breath. On the craft's lower deck, Trooper John Jacko Hill checks the bilge pump controls again, eyes stinging from diesel fumes. The gauges tremble, one needle dips and stops. It's holding Jimmy, he calls up. She's floating like one of Straussler's miracles. Green manages a laugh that dies in the crosswind. Then let's not test the almighty too far. Behind them, the sea flashes with artillery fire from 100 miles of horizon. Battleships Warspite and Ramillies trade deafening broadsides with German guns above the beaches. The sound turns the air into a living bruise. The channel smells of cordite and oil and nerves. At 5:55, the ramp crewman waves a flag. Launch now. The first Shermans grind forward, treads screeching against metal. One after another, they dive off the edge of the barge like prehistoric animals returning to an ocean that doesn't want them. A moment of silence, then bubbles and the slap of waves against canvas. Green's driver, Sergeant Rex Peach, yells over the clatter of the wave shield. Depth. 2 meters, we're good. The tank steadies. The engine note evens out. Propellers bite. The impossible happens. 33 tons of steel is afloat, paddling under its own power. 2 knots up, steady as she goes, Peach says, gripping the controls as green water sheets across the bow. From the horizon, France looks gray and far. The beachhead code-named Sword waits 10 miles away under falling shells and tracer lines. But for the Royal Hussars, success depends on arrival. Infantry in the first assault wave need armor against the concrete strongpoints above Wistrium seawall. If the DD tanks sink now, the beaches will die without cover. Keep those propellers alive, Green mutters. A gull shrieks overhead, one of the few sounds untouched by war. 500 meters to starboard, another Sherman dips forward too sharply. The screen collapses inward like skin punctured. The tank slews sideways, groaning. 4-3 heartbeats, it hangs half-submerged, crew visible through white spray. Green watches helplessly as the engine coughs, backfires, dies. The tank pitches nose first beneath the waves, men scrambling on its roof like sailors on a capsizing raft. Christ, Hill whispers. That's the third already. Green counts shapes still afloat, a dozen of the original 20. The sea has claimed the rest, swallowed whole in the gray. Signal command. Half of them gone down. He shouts into the radio. Static answers, then the faint voice of the squadron leader, keep moving. Surf line in 6 minutes. There's no choice but forward. At 3 knots, the canvas bulges under the weight of every swell. Streams of shotgun flak flutter down from the sky, but the Luftwaffe is mercifully absent. The horizon grows sharper, dunes, tracers and smoke twisted into the wind. At the German defense post code-named WN8, Oberfeldwebel Heinrich Custer of the 736th Infantry Regiment peers through the periscope of his armored observation post. Below him the troops of 2. Company crouch behind the seawall, hands white on MG-42 grips. Through the coastal mist, he has expected landing craft. What he sees instead makes him blink. Tanks, he mutters. Tanks in the water? He adjusts the focus knob again. No mistake, out beyond the shore, hulls rise and fall like gray fish where waves break white. The sea glimmers against what look like stretched sails. Command, he barks into the field telephone. Unidentified craft. No, not craft. Tanks. They're swimming. Static. Then disbelief. You have drunk too much salt water, Ontaroff's ear. But now even the machine gunners see it. Shapes growing, moving closer, screens glinting silver in flashes of flak. They're coming through the surf, one shouts. For 5 seconds, the entire bunker line hesitates as if the laws of war have just come undone. In the time it takes for shock to turn to reaction, the first DD Shermans grind up onto the sand, shedding water like marine beasts, guns already traversing toward the bunkers. At Sword Beach, the impossible has arrived. Sword Beach, Normandy. 7:25 hours. The tide is higher now, and the wind carries the tang of salt and cordite. Waves slap against tank hulls and drown the sound of anything but engines and gunfire. The Duplex Drive Shermans of the 13th/18th Royal Hussars have survived their half-mile crawl through the surf, 16 of them, bobbing like strange amphibians now clawing their way onto sand. Lieutenant Jimmy Green keeps his head half out of the turret, spray clinging to his goggles. Down screens. Down screens. He shouts into the throat mic. The driver hauls on a release cord. Compressed gas hisses and the great canvas walls collapse outward, folding down against the hull with a leathery slap. It's as if the tank has shed its disguise and remembered what it is. The 75mm gun lowers, turret traversing left to right. Infantry from the 8th Brigade, men of the South Lancashire Regiment, cheer between explosions as they see the supposed rubber boats on the horizon unfold into armored beasts. One soldier near the waterline yells into the wind, half laughing, half mad, "They bloody swam." Up the beach, German positions unleash. From WN-18 near La Brèche, an MG-42 sweeps the Titterline, bullets hissing across surf. Green's gunner, Corporal Alfie Cross, swings the cannon onto the muzzle flash. Target, right bunker, 10 o'clock. Fire. The first round slams into wet sand, sending seawater high like a geyser. The second lands square against the gun aperture. The bunker belches smoke, the machine gun falling silent. Green exhales just once. Advance second gear. We're through. To the flank, the Hussars' sister troops follow, their Sherman exhausts coughing steam like locomotives after a long dive. Royal Engineers swarm behind the tanks, hauling Bangalore torpedoes to clear wire. The sea cracks behind them under naval shellfire, Warspite's 15-inch rounds dropping short enough that spray covers the tanks again, the air pressure making eardrums pop. German Oberfeldwebel Custer in the forward bunker watches, stunned as shells and smoke hide the edge of the sea. His men fire Panzerfausts into the surf, timing the waves like hunters. 2 hit. One breaks a Sherman's left track, the hull listing but still firing. Another deflects off, spinning end over end like thrown scrap. They're in among the infantry, Custer tells his gun crews. We can't separate them, fire low. But it's already too late. The DDs grind through the shingle, clutching the beach with cleated tracks, coarse sand spitting under steel grousers. Green's vehicle reaches the first low seawall, engine howling with strain. He unbuttons the hatch, looks right. 3 tanks abreast, turrets moving in rhythm, firing point blank at the nearest pillbox. Bunker edges crumble under repeated hits, concrete blooming white and black. On the infantry net, a British sergeant's voice crackles through static. Armor up, the bloody fish tanks made it. They made it and they saved the beach. Because this isn't Omaha, the tide, wind and timing are right. The water here is narrow, the current weaker. The Hussars' launch point was only a mile offshore, not 6,000 yards like the Americans to the west. Every factor the channel gods could have tilted, they did. At 7:45 Sherman crab flails and DDs roll side by side through smoke toward Wistrium's eastern defenses. Their guns find targets faster than any human can label them. Signal post, destroyed. Anti-tank gun, silenced. The infantry advance finally sticks. One DD tank parks itself halfway up the shingle and fires inland like a miniature destroyer, shells bursting red through dust and wire. 8 miles down the coast, off Juno Beach, another flotilla of DD surfaces through chop. The Canadian 1st Hussars of the 2nd Armored Brigade have driven their Shermans into 4-foot seas under a cold north wind. Half of them founder before sighting shore. One overturns in a wave trough, its canvas collapsing like a parachute. But those that survive come on like patient predators. Major Chuck Worthington leads his command Sherman Perseverance through the last swell. Screens down, he orders. The canvas slaps away, and the deep bellow of the tank's Continental engine takes over. Land there, by the church spire. He nods toward Courseulles-sur-Mer. German gunners on the sea wall scramble to realign their barrels. They'd aimed for boats, not metal rising from the surf. The Canadians fire first. As the DDs roll free of the water, surfboards of foam trail from their hulls. They just came out of the damn sea, one German machine gunner later recalls, captured and trembling. Tanks, we thought it was a trick of the smoke. By 9 o'clock, Swords beaches hold tanks rolling inland, their treads clattering over flooded fields once thought impassable. British engineers follow in the wake, laying trackways, hauling the wounded. A line of DDs turns west toward Lyon-sur-Mer, through blows of German 88s firing blind. In the chaos east of Cannes, Wehrmacht defenders radio frantically to Corps Command, Feindpanzer über dem Wasser. Sie kommen schwimmend direkt aus dem Meer. Enemy tanks over the water, they are swimming straight out of the sea. The response, scrawled in a log later found by advancing Canadians, reads only, Halten Sie Ihr Nerven. Hold your nerves. But nerves don't fare well against miracles. On Omaha Beach that same hour U.S. 741st Tank Battalion's Duplex Drives fight a crueler fate. Launched too far offshore, nearly 5,000 yards, their screens tear under the first Atlantic rollers. Water seeps along seams and rivets. One after another, the Shermans founder and tip until only their periscopes break the surface. Crews fight to escape through hatches jammed by water pressure. A handful reach shore, swimming into chaos, to find every accompanying tank gone. But in the British and Canadian sectors, Sword, Juno and Gold, the floating Shermans deliver what doctrine had dreamed. Infantry who should have been pinned on open sand move behind rolling armor from the first moments. By noon, both the Queen's Own rifles and the East Yorks move through breached strongpoints like men who suddenly remember how to breathe. At the seawall above Hermanville, a Royal Engineer looks back toward the surf line dotted with empty screens bobbing like ghosts. He shakes his head slowly. They came out of the water, he says, like something the Germans never learned to fear until this morning. On the far side of the dunes, Lieutenant Green's Sherman lurches onto a cobblestone road. Sword White, this is courage, he calls into the mic. We're inland. Still swimming, just don't need the props anymore. Omaha Beach, 6:45 hours. While British and Canadian tank crews crawl ashore under a turning tide of fog and fortune, the sea off Vierville-sur-Mer becomes a graveyard of steel. The 741st Tank Battalion's Duplex Drives, Shermans of the same kind Henry Straussler perfected for the Channel crossing, have met a different ocean. The swells are larger here, 6 feet from trough to crest, with a crosswind that drives everything east. When the LCTs open their ramps 5,000 yards offshore, the first DDs plunge into water that has no mercy for uncertainty. Lieutenant Leonard Wingfield, commanding number 11, feels the tank rock sickeningly as soon as she floats. The inflatable screen groans. Seams along the starboard side weep streams of brine. Forward gear, he shouts into the intercom. The propellers churn froth. The nose dips once, twice, then steadies. A glimpse of other tanks, 15 of them, bobbing in the distance, strange silhouettes in a gunmetal sea. Winfield checks his compass. Steer 080. His driver answers with quiet panic. Sir, we're shipping water fast. Then the next wave comes broadside. The tank rolls halfway over. The bilge pump screams. Wingfield grabs the hatch rim, fingers slipping. Keep her straight, he yells, but the driver's reply dissolves in static and noise. The Sherman wallows, heavier now, the propellers cavitate in air. Crewmen of the LCT watch helplessly. The ocean surface flashes silver where one tank screen folds inward like a crushed paper cup. The Sherman disappears almost instantly, leaving behind nothing but bubbles and a man's helmet turning slow in the surf. The next and the next. 17 out of 29 go down before sighting shore. Those inside have seconds. Water rushing through ventilators, power dying, sunlight shrinking above the periscope dome. A few manage to blow hatches, most do not. When after-action divers return weeks later, they will find the DDs upright on the seabed, hatches still latched, periscopes pointing toward France as if still searching for the beach. The handful that survive the crossing, 5, maybe 6 tanks, fight their way up the sand beside men of the 16th and 116th Infantry Regiments. They emerge coughing seawater from hull drains, canvas torn, engines half drowned. But the gunners inside still traverse, still pull triggers, still throw high explosive into the murder zones at Les Moulins and Dog Green. Tank Courageous, one of the few that make it, crushes through a beach obstacle and opens fire at WN72. 2 rounds, 3, the 4th punching clean through a gun embrasure. Every infantryman who crouches behind it lives because that tank refused to sink. Up the coast, Sword and Juno's Amphibious miracle spreads. Royal Engineers cut gaps in the seawalls. Men shout over radios so clogged with static they might as well be speaking prayer. DDs from the 13th/18th and the Staffordshire Yeomanry climb off the beaches and trade surf salt for the smell of French hedgerow. At Lyons-sur-Mer, Lieutenant Green's troop drives straight across the coastal road, turrets swiveling between whitewashed villas that still have curtains in them. Resistance is light but fanatical, MG-42s firing from shuttered windows, one sniper on the church tower. A single 75mm shell brings the structure down like a rag pulled tight. The tank crews don't cheer, they move past it because duty never slows to admire. By afternoon, the surviving DDs link up with infantry heading inland toward the Canal. From their radio sets rattles a constant mixture of triumph and tragedy. Sword secure. Juno advancing. Omaha held by inches. Across the channel, in an operations tent outside Portsmouth, Colonel Sir Percy Hobart studies signal transcripts through a fog of cigarette smoke. Mixed results, he says flatly. The device works. The Atlantic does not. He taps a pen against the map where Omaha lies scored in red pencil. We lost them too far offshore. The Yanks never stood a chance launching in that sea. Kaiser's engineering miracle, the groundbreaking British design adapted for the Sherman, had turned into 2 very different stories only miles apart. On one side, tin sails carried armor through surf like drifting fortresses. On the other, the same invention sank like a stone. Late that night, engineers walked the remnants of Omaha's tide line. The beach glistens with wreckage, life belts, fuel cans, unspent shells, and most hauntingly the canvas remains of the DD screens themselves, ripped and clinging, flattened against sand like seaweed. When the tide retreats, it drags them out again to a darkness that smells of salt and diesel. At Sword, the same tide leaves the first prints of victory. Children of nearby Wistrium, wide-eyed from cellars they didn't leave for days, will later tell that they saw tanks come out of the water, moving like living things, shedding foam as if they had risen from under the sea. They remember soldiers sliding down their hulls, laughing as if fatigue itself had been conquered. The war photographers at dawn find one DD Sherman half in water, half on land, guns still leveled toward a house that no longer stands. The morning light hits its wet hull and makes it shine like something born from the ocean. On that day, in every war diary written from Normandy to London, one phrase repeats: tanks that swam ashore. The Germans would call them Schwimmen Bestien. The Allies called them deliverance.